When we talk about corruption in South Africa, it can often seem like an abstract concept. But if you really want to understand its real-life consequences, look no further than the collapse of South Africa's train services. The looting of PRASA, South Africa's passenger rail service, began in 2012 under the leadership of CEO Lucky Montana. If you want to understand the scale of the graft, a Treasury investigation which looked into 216 contracts awarded between 2012 and 2015, found that only 13 were legit. The total value of those contracts was around 15 billion rand. The result of this corruption has been the destruction of South Africa's commuter rail service. In 2010, local rail passengers were making around 500 million train journeys a year. By 2022, this figure had fallen to 19 million. In Cape Town, the most significant metro rail line, servicing underprivileged communities like Khayelitsha and Mitchell's Plain, has effectively not been operational since 2019. According to estimates, this has forced an additional 1 million passengers on the road daily, whereas previously they would have used trains. Now let's talk about Transnet, the government's custodian of ports, rail and pipelines. Transnet is in charge of the trains that transport cargo rather than humans. The scale of corruption at Transnet was the largest since the arms deal contract in the 1990s. To give just one example, a contract was signed with the Chinese Rolling Railway Stock Corporation in 2014 to buy just over 1,000 locomotives to the value of 54.4 billion rand, with almost a quarter of that price being channeled to Gupta-owned companies. Of the trains which have arrived from this contract, they've been late and pretty much useless. This, in combination with the full picture of Transnet corruption and a spiraling issue with criminal syndicates stealing cables, has meant that the ability of local businesses to transport their goods via rail has been drastically reduced. So how are those goods being transported now? Via road, which is presenting huge problems for roads and for traffic. In fact, the heavy volume of trucks on our road now is tearing up road infrastructure. This is the reason for many of our potholes, because the roads simply cannot take this kind of pounding. Trucks also account for almost 10% of fatal crashes on South African roads these days, according to a recent report from the Road Traffic Management Corporation. So together, the collapse of PRASA and Transnet have made all our lives more difficult in multiple different ways. That's the thing about corruption. It isn't just abstract, it brings down nations. And this is why we need civil society and we need journalism, to expose corruption and to put pressure on those in power to hold the corrupt accountable. Help us to keep busting the bad guys.